A record-breaking win for the Adelaide Thunderbirds over the New South Wales Swifts puts them back to the top of the ANZ Champ table. The Vixens defy logic, producing another great escape, while the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic produced their 7th win in a row to jump into the top 4 for the first time after they knocked off the Northern Mystics. As I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside Sherelle McMahon. And Sherelle, what an incredible round of the ANZ Champs. 2 games decided by a goal, 1 by 2, and then the Thunderbirds thumping the Swifts by 27.
That's right. I mean, we've spoken about it so much this season with the evenness of the competition, and it's been shown again this week with 3 incredibly tight matches. And for me, really, what a performance by the Thunderbirds. We'll talk about it later, but they were so dominant in that game.
Yeah, they certainly were. Let's have a look at all of the results from round 12 of the ANZ Champs. It, of course, started with the Vixens getting over the line somehow against the West Coast Fever by a goal in Melbourne. The Thunderbirds, 27-goal winners, 62 defeating the New South Wales Swifts, 35 in Sydney. The Magic knocking off the Mystics in the big clash of the New Zealand heavyweights, 48-46 in Auckland. And the Tactics, a great comeback to beat the Steel by a goal on Monday in Invercargill. The Firebirds and the Pulse having the bite. Sherelle, let's first talk about the Melbourne Vixens against the West Coast Fever. Heartbreak again for the Fever. They were in control for the majority of the match. They won 3 out of 4 quarters. They led by 5 at half-time, just could not finish it off in those dying moments.
That's right. I mean, we've seen this a couple of times from the Fever team over the last few weeks. They've really put out some great performances, but just haven't been able to finish it off. And, you know, in this game against the Vixens, they really put themselves into a great position. They had a number of fantastic performances across the court, but they just couldn't get it done in the end.
Some key players: Chanel Gomez, 8 rebounds, goal defence for the West Coast Fever. Ash Brazel was outstanding. Catherine Cox having one of her best games for the season as well. So they were so close, put themselves in the winning position, but just a case of deja vu for the Fever.
Yeah, it was. There was an error right at the end there. They let the Vixens back into the game and gave them that opportunity, and the Vixens again just took it. This is the 3rd time they've done it at home this season. They've come from behind and won by the smallest of margins. So, such a great quality for this team to have, to be able to fight back from any position really, and still have that confidence to be able to nail it in the end.
Yeah, they'll take the premiership points to the Vixens. It certainly wasn't convincing. One area of the court they struggled with was the shooting circle. They used all 4 goalers throughout the match. We saw Ash Howard come on in the 3rd quarter. We haven't seen her at all this year. It was a bit of a surprise. It threw many people, but did a great job in the 3rd quarter, opened up the front line, but then they had to revert back to Tegan Caldwell in there.
Yeah, they did. And look, I doubt that the Fever really prepared too much for Ash Howard because, as you said, she hasn't been out on court yet this season. But I thought she came on, and as you said, she opened up the front space really well in front of Karen Howarth, who came on at quarter time and was a really great strength for the Vixens under the post there. And that combination just broke things open for them in that 3rd quarter. And yes, Tegan Caldwell came back on in that last quarter and gave Gomez another different player to look at again. She caused quite a few changes in that attack end and got there in the end.
Sherelle, we know the defence line of the Vixens is rock solid. The mid-court's one of the best as well. This shooting circle, we haven't seen 2 goalers own their position for consecutive weeks. Is it a concern for the team heading into the finals, do you think?
Look, I think initially at the start of the season, it was a real strength of the Vixens to be able to make those changes and, keep the defenders from the other team guessing, I guess. But I think at this stage, you'd like someone or a couple of those players to really be standing up and taking control of that. So still yet to happen. And, there's not much of the season left.
At the start of the year, Norma Plummer said that her team would be competitive in the first half, dangerous in the second. That's certainly been true to her word because their last 4 games they've lost by 5 goals or less. They've been right in the contest. And of course, she called her team soft at the end of the game against the Swifts last week. But they really did fire up and put out a great effort. So they are heading in the right direction, that team from West Coast.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that they've been heading in that direction. They've been competitive for a number of years now. And, the challenge for them as a group is to take that next step. We haven't seen them do it. We've seen them over the last few years nearly do it, but not quite. So, maybe next year for them is the season.
Well, let's have a look now at the game between the Thunderbirds and the New South Wales Swifts played in Sydney. It was a 27-goal win for the Thunderbirds, a game of 2 extremes. It was the Thunderbirds absolutely dominating in every position, and then for the Swifts, just total capitulation, just could not have the answer to anything out on that court.
No, and they tried a lot of different things with different players coming on and off the court, and there just seemed to be a lot of frustration within the Swifts camp too. They, were trying everything, and I heard on the commentary Laura Geitz talk about sometimes when you try harder and harder, the worse it gets, and it just seemed a little bit like that for the Swifts.
The New South Wales Swifts were kept to their lowest score in the history of the ANZ Champs, only 35 goals. The Thunderbirds' defence line kept them to 8 goals in the first and second quarter, 9 in the third and only 10 in the fourth. So defensively for the Thunderbirds, outstanding, and the biggest losing margin for the Swifts as well.
Yeah, biggest losing margin. It was just such a dominant display by the Thunderbirds team, and this Swifts attacking lineup really has caused some problems throughout the season for different teams. So for them to really for the Thunderbirds to be all over them was a great performance. They shut down that moving circle and did a great job.
Shani Layton was pretty outstanding for the Thunderbirds. She had 6 intercepts, 5 deflections, kept Susan Prattley 6 goals from 11 attempts.
Yeah, she's doing just such a great job back there, and really creating some great turnovers for the Thunderbirds. And Carla Borrego, another fantastic performance.
Well, the win for the Thunderbirds puts them to the top of the table. The Swifts drop out of the top 4. It's that close, those results. So an outstanding effort from the Thunderbirds. Let's have a look now at the Magic against the Mystics. A 2-goal win for the team from the Waikato region. Their 7th consecutive win in a row for the Magic.
Yeah, look, the Magic, really, they started the season with 4 losses and have just been coming like an absolute steam train since then. And their combinations right throughout the court are just getting stronger and stronger.
Well, the Williams-De Bruyne defensive combination kept Catherine Latu, who was a scoring machine, to just 18 goals. Maria Tutaya 28, but it really was that defensive pairing that silenced Latu.
Absolutely, and we've been talking about that combination a little bit, that it is just getting stronger and stronger as the weeks go on, and I think that they've still got some improvement to make and some growth to happen. And you look up the other end, you've got Irene Van Dyke still doing a great job, and there's just so much talent in that group and experience in those kind of tight situations.
Yeah, the win for the Magic puts them into the top 4 for the first time this year. Fair to say the Mystics potentially may have squandered their chance of a home semi-final after dropping that game. They're now into 3rd place.
Yes, and that is how tight this top 4 is. We'll talk about the ladder shortly, and it's they've potentially given up that top 2 position. Who knows with what happens in the next 2 rounds, because it's been so unpredictable. But look, it's so important every single match.
Well, speaking of the ladder, Sherelle, let's check it out now after 12 rounds of the ANZ Championship. There you have it, the Thunderbirds back on top. They've been there before and they're there again. The Vixens only on second by percentage behind the Thunderbirds. So those two in the pole position at the moment. The Mystics in 3rd, and there you have it, the Magic jumping into 4th. But the Swifts and the Firebirds, Sherelle, still legitimate chances of cracking the top 4. They need to win both games, and they need results to fall their way as well.
Absolutely. The key for them really is to win both of their matches and cross their fingers that the right teams for them lose, which is not a great position to be in, to rely on other results. But there is still a realistic chance, and the Thunderbirds and Vixens potentially have kind of locked away their finals hopes and chances, and but it's still the position's still going to be jostling over these last few weeks.
Sherelle, it was a cracking round. Who are your performers of the week this round?
Well, my performer of the week is actually the crowd. Which I'm going to talk specifically about the Melbourne crowd. We had a record crowd at Hisense Arena, 7,500 screaming fans who really lifted the Vixens, and they continue to do that over the season. Fantastic crowd there, but across the whole competition, the crowds have been up at games watching live, and it's the sport's just in a great position.
Certainly is. My performer of the week, Sherelle, it goes to the Canterbury Tactics. We haven't spoken about them, but they got up by 1 goal in the dying moments against the Southern Steel. 41 goals from Joe Harton, and a great story too. Their captain Marie Bowden got into the change rooms at the end of the game and bawled her eyes out because she was so happy that her team finally got across the line.
Which is so great, that emotion. We've spoken about Marie a couple of times, and she's such a great leader out there. So well done to the Tactics.
Well, time now to preview round 13 of the ANZ Champs, the penultimate round before the finals. This is how the teams line up. It is the Magic hosting the Thunderbirds, a huge clash in Tauranga. The Swifts and the Steel in Sydney. The Firebirds in a must-win game against the West Coast Fever in Brisbane. The Tactics will host the Northern Mystics. And a big one on Monday night, the Central Pulse hosting the Melbourne Vixens. Sherelle, let's first talk about the Magic and the Thunderbirds. It's a must-win game for the Magic to stay in the top 4. Thunderbirds looking to consolidate top 2 finish.
Yeah, and look, the Thunderbirds are really just coming into some fantastic form, obviously, in the lead up to this game. But for Magic, it is a must-win game, and they fight. They've got some really great, tenacious players out there, and I'm looking forward to some of the really fantastic combinations or contests out on court.
Yeah, there should be some beauties, of course. De Bruyne and Williams, arguably the best 2 defensive pair against Borrego and Bell, maybe the best shooting combination. And then the 2 best centres in the world, Laura Langman, Nat Von Berto. Doesn't get much better than that.
It doesn't, and I'm really looking forward to the Von Berto-Langman clash. Nat Von Berto really building across the season after having a bit of an interrupted pre-season, so it should be a good one.
Next game we're going to have a look at, Sherelle, is the Firebirds and the Fever. They, of course, met in round 9 just a few weeks ago, and it was a 1-goal victory to the Firebirds. These 2 teams match up so well. Fever would be absolutely desperate. Firebirds playing for their lives.
They are. Firebirds have to win this to keep their finals chances alive, but the Fever, I think that they are growing in confidence, and I think it's only a matter of time before they finish a game off, and this could be the week.
Interesting stat with the West Coast Fever that every single year they defeat the defending champion. So Firebirds are the defending champion, so it could be a win for the Fever if history repeats itself. And our final game, Sherelle, I want to have a look at is the Melbourne Vixens against the Central Pulse. It's played in New Zealand. It's a danger game for the Vixens because the Pulse are a dangerous team, but even more lethal at home.
They are incredibly lethal. They've really pushed some teams and had a great couple of wins this season, obviously. So, really dangerous game for the Vixens. They haven't hit the form that they would want to be hitting in the lead into the finals. So, they need to do it now. They really need to be finding that.
It'll be interesting to see Caitlin Thwaites, of course, a former Vixen, premiership player in 2009. She'll go up against her old side.
Yes, so that'll be a good one to look at. And Caitlin Thwaites, wow, what a season she's had. So dominant under the goal circle and such a great target for the Pulse. So it'll be a challenge for the Vixens defenders.
Well, speaking of dominant, Sherelle, I'm now starting to surge away in the tipping competition.
Yes.
It is now time to get your tips for round 13 of the Champs. Who are you going for this round?
Okay, my tips this round are the Magic, the Swifts, the Firebirds, Mystics and Vixens. What about you?
Okay, I'm going to back the Thunderbirds, the Swifts, the Fever, the Mystics and the Pulse. So a couple of different ones there, Sherelle. So
I'll
it'll
be
very
making up a few there, yep.
Well, that is about it for another episode of Centre Pass. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you jump onto the ANZ Champs website, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download the Game Changer ANZ Champs iPhone app. Sherelle, thank you once again, and also jump onto the website because it's time for the All-Star team once again.
It is, absolutely. Everyone can jump online and vote for their favourite player in each position. So it'll be really interesting this year. There's so many great players in each of the positions.
Sherelle, love your work. Thanks again. Make sure you check out the broadcast details too in your local guides for round 13 of the ANZ Champs. It should be a beauty. We'll catch you next week for Centre Pass. Goodbye for now. Thank you to our sponsors, our principal sponsor,
Associate sponsors,
support sponsors and suppliers,
and our broadcast partners.